it off, we will ask our, oh, we're being live streamed now. So actually, Lieutenant Governor, I'll turn it to you to begin.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I want to say, first of all, welcome back to everybody, and thank you so much for being with us today to continue this important P20 initiative. There is lots going on by way of state government these days, and I know everybody's very busy, and so we appreciate that you are focused and committed to these efforts. And we're going to focus our conversation today on exciting implementation efforts that are underway in response to the recommendations that have been created by this group of folks in the CEC, and that CEC is supporting. And so we're going to take a deeper dive into areas that we must address to ensure that our students are ready, that they have access, and that they can successfully transition to post-secondary and sustain a positive post-secondary experience. And so today we're going to work on three very broad things. First, we're going to begin reviewing and discussing data that is regarding participation and success in dual credit courses and programs. And then we're going to build some early momentum through the use of the 9th grade on-track data and advising. And we're also going to ensure a strong start to post-secondary through gateway course completion and first-year experience. So based on our discussions regarding the data that we have collected so far and that we're going to continue to utilize, we also will propose work groups to move forward action to improve the outcomes of our students. So before we begin our meeting, my higher education counterpart, Dr. Thompson, is going to talk about, again, the important role that each of us have as we serve on this continuum and ask for a commitment to our norms. So I want to say thank you so much for engaging in such meaningful work, and to Dr. Thompson for bringing this vision to life. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see everybody. It's a lot of time going on. I mean, lots of stuff happening. I do want to thank all of you who are involved in this. And in a second, I'll remind us of our purpose. But I just want to give a shout out to Representative Tipton and Senator West. We got the early literacy bill. Let me tell you, that's, I just want to say congratulations. I mean, these are the sorts of things that I think is extremely important as we think about the pipeline, as we think about what it means to have a quality education and what it means to really give all of our students an opportunity to grow and excel, you know. And the piece of the conversation, I'll give the Continuum mission here in a second, but, you know, in a nutshell, what we're here as educators and as policy makers and so on, is to think about what is good for the student to have a base and a process for a good lifelong learning opportunity that they can take in the workforce. It's the ability to help them to think deeply, to critically problem solve, but it's also our opportunity to help them to be creative in how they use that in the workforce once we give them what we need to, and P12 as well as higher education. So that bill passed, and that made me happy, I have to say. So congratulations, Representative Tipton. That was a win. As you know, our mission really is to improve actions, the Continuum's mission I'm talking about, to improve actions that ensure students can equitably earn the necessary degree and credentials to enter the workforce successfully. I mean, that is extremely important because it is about deep learning. It's the essence of deep learning and the ability to translate, you know, all of the knowledge we had before and transition to the next level, whether it's K through 3 transitioning on 4th and beyond, or whether it's 8th going into 9th, or high school going into college, or college going into the workforce. All of those items are extremely important as we have this conversation as we move forward. I really feel good about our past year. And, you know, we would not have accomplished as many things that we have without the collaboration. And our summit is coming up where we're going to talk about innovation through collaboration. This is a great example. You know, this is why it's imperative for you as Continuum members to thoughtfully engage and contribute your knowledge. The reason why you're here is because you have a knowledge base that you're offering, and not just one that is superficially informed. You all are deep in what you do. And so this is the knowledge that we're bringing to the table to build this educational pipeline. And once again, it is about transitions all the way into the workforce. And it's not just for successfully transitioning in the workforce, that they know they have the knowledge, skills, and employability, as well as other technical skills, to make sure that they can be successful in the workforce. So I'm happy that we're a part of this conversation ongoing. I will tell you, this is now a part of the ingrained way for us to think about it and for us to do our business. So please get engaged, know what we're about. We're going to go through a lot of other macro and micro goals here to help us know more. But I just want to thank the team for their work, Amanda, Jennifer, all of you from ESG, and all those who took part in my co-conspirators, the Lieutenant Governor and the Commissioner. Thank you all for the work you're doing. So Amanda, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it from there.
Actually, I think the Lieutenant Governor wanted to share a quick piece as well, that to caveat onto your comments.
Yes, I did. Thank you so much, Amanda and Dr. Thompson. I just wanted to share with this group that whether you realize it or not, you really are visionaries in helping us to streamline this entire continuum of education in Kentucky, even to the point where we included early childhood education in this continuum from the very beginning, and that was intentional and purposeful. And I'm so happy to say that yesterday, I got to announce at the Early Childhood Institute that Kentucky is leading the nation in our establishment of an early childhood director apprenticeship program. And so they had to throw the word director in there because we kept saying early childhood apprenticeship. And I'm like, guys, I don't want people to think we're putting 4-year-olds to work. But it's the early childhood director apprenticeship program. We're leading the nation. We have 60 in our inaugural class. And so readying that workforce for something that we know is so critically important says a lot, and it speaks volumes that they have had a seat at this table since the very beginning. And so I think that representation has really helped to move us forward in that area and to make Kentucky a national leader. And I'm going to just say real quickly, the governor included in his budget funding for universal pre-K for every 4-year-old in Kentucky. That is imperative for our workforce right this minute in getting folks back to work. That's always been a huge focus of ours, is the labor force participation rate, but also the long-term investment that we make in a generation of kids will change the trajectory of their lives. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir when I tell you this, but I just wanted to let you know that this group was the first one that really brought pre-K in and gave them a seat at the table. And now we're seeing some things start to move and happen. And you guys are such a big part of that, that I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thompson and Lieutenant Governor, for your opening remarks and the connections. Oh, Dr. Thompson.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Amanda. I mean,
Okay.
I have to do one up on Lieutenant Governor. I just can't. But I just want to tell you that this continuum is also being recognized by several folks in the workforce. The pipeline is now becoming a necessary conversation from their end. I appreciate the House actually putting some healthcare pipeline stuff in. So I was talking to someone last week at the chamber dinner, and they were talking about what this continuum was doing and how there's so many folks now are talking about this as really a reality of creating a systematic way of thinking about the business that we're doing. So congratulations, Lieutenant Governor, for getting that recognition for us. But sorry, Amanda, I will not interrupt you again, I promise.
No, sorry, it's completely fine. All good stuff. So no, I appreciate the comments and to see the momentum in just in a year and 2 months, which is just phenomenal to me. Joette's going to share this slide, and I just want to briefly just remind us of the norms, which I think this group is pretty proficient as such. But just as a good reminder, it's how important it is that we rely on you and your expertise and your not only you as an individual who you represent, but the folks in which are in that role group, whether it be an administrator or a post-secondary admissions counselor, a parent, a student. Your role is vitally important. And so we really want you to be fully present with your information, your lived experiences. Consistency of membership, I cannot brag on this group enough. That's not even an issue because there's such commitment. We welcome contributions, and I think that is always really good for us to share and push back on our thinking, to develop that, ideas on the table to promote meaningful dialogue, be involved in individual level of comfort. And so seeking clarity and understanding. One of the things that we're more committed to doing for you this year is to provide more messaging. That was a request of the members to say, I will message and share, but sometimes I'm not exactly sure what to share. So with that is a commitment of improvement that we have for you. And then pursue positive intentions that promote and facilitate meaningful and collegial discussions. I feel like that has always been the spirit in which this group has met. It's always been very honest, passionate, but very hopeful, and in the right spirit of which we want to do. This one was one we added. If you remember, we will hear from, and more importantly, listen to our students, families, and those who represent and work with students, particularly those who are historically underserved by our education system. And I think this drove our work last year. Our focus groups, the work that we put into capturing the voices, we have more voices to capture, but I really feel like that the recommendations and the actions that you all have took great time to put input into, prioritize, was still based on the voices of the folks who live in our state from all over the state, all different lived experiences. And this is something we will continue to do. And I hope, as you see, as we go into a deeper dive into our why, what's going on, that we can ask those same questions and ensure that we are fulfilling this norm of hearing from and listening to, asking harder questions. That's going to be kind of our goal. And then we will be guided by the purpose of our Commonwealth Education Continuum, which focuses on success for all students. So I think this is a great way to segue into our work. And so what we are going to do is, this is not just last year, 2021, we did this, and now 2022, we're going to do this. This is like building upon, continuing what we had learned from last year. And the resounding question we got from you as members and from the work group members is, we need more data, and why is that happening? So we have committed to continuing the focus areas, but specifically diving deeper. All to say, that doesn't mean implementation efforts are not going on. And so the implementation efforts from many of our agencies are really starting to take hold. So what we're going to do is highlight some of those implementation efforts each time we meet, just so you know what's going on. And so today we're going to highlight 3 quick areas. One is advising. This was a top priority in our successful transition to post-secondary. It was also a top priority, or one of the priorities of how we're going to get to ensuring that there are more access and opportunities for students to engage in early post-secondary opportunities. And even when we talked about teacher workforce, there was talk about advising students into career paths and what the options are. All that continues to go around advising. So I am elated to introduce you to Destiny O'Rourke. She is our newest hire. We had committed to working on advising and expanding capacity across our state and elevating the importance of advising for our students in their post-secondary decisions. So I'm actually going to turn it to Destiny to give us a very brief overview. And there's a couple of slides you'll get to see. We'll get to share this information, but this is what's coming very soon. And we really credit you all as a continuum for making this a priority, and we took you serious. So Destiny, I'm turning it to you, and I'm so glad you're here with us.
Well, thank you so much. I too am very excited. And I just have to say, as someone who has lived in the trenches of the advising world for quite some time, I just have to thank you so much for this work that you're doing. It is exciting to have a seat at the table, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves. I've really been enjoying, taking on this advising front. So one of the things I just want to mention, you'll see the slides pretty soon here, is that the Kentucky Advising Academy It really strives to provide professional learning for school counselors and for youth service center coordinators and other folks who are professional educators in the advising space. I had a chance to review some of the focus groups that were conducted last year. And one of the quotes that really stood out to me was one from a school counselor who said, "We are seen as the experts in getting students through school and ready for what's next, but we really are learning on the job and need more consistent training." And that really spoke loudly to me because every day there's a different student with a different need and different interests and different abilities. And so the advising space itself changes all of the time. And so I'm looking forward to being able to really take this opportunity to build something that's user friendly for our professionals who really just need this. To that end, the Kentucky Advising Academy really hopes to do three things. We really want to build knowledge, we want to build capacity, and we want to build community. And so there are multiple ways for our practitioners to engage. Monthly, we're going to offer a podcast called Well Advised, and that'll just be very brief. It'll offer just a few minutes over a single advising topic, but it's also going to serve to recruit people, practitioners to come to the monthly webinar. The webinar is important because we will actually talk about that same podcast topic, but allow practitioners to then build community with each other. And so they'll have a chance to break out and share best practices and just really talk about the things that help to keep each other encouraged as they're building a systematic approach to advising in their schools. So then those two pieces, the podcast and webinar, will come together for our quarterly newsletter. And for that newsletter, we're going to recap the different events that we attend. We're going to share resources from the podcast and from the webinar and from asset mapping done by our design team. And then also we want to highlight positive advising that's happening in the state. So whatever stories we can hear from the field, we want to be able to spotlight those. And then we have incredible partners. As you know, there are tons of folks in Kentucky working in the advising space. So we want to also use the newsletter to amplify their voices. And then it all leads to what I feel like is the most fun part, and that's the workshops. So starting this fall, we'll have a workshop. They're all regionally based. It's a full day workshop. The fall will focus on post-secondary access. And so we'll cover topics to that end. And then in the spring, we'll focus on post-secondary readiness. And so those are broken up where the morning is about building knowledge, and then the afternoon is about building capacity and community. So we'll have opportunities for them to learn in the morning and then to share out with each other in the afternoons. Thanks to our amazing communications team, we have a social media presence that we're going to start building. And then we're also going to be working on an online toolkit with our ESG partners who, just hats off to them, are just amazing. So it's been wonderful. And I really appreciate the time to share with you today.
Thank you, Destiny, so much. I did not mention to you Destiny's background that I think is quite the unicorn, if I must say so. So Destiny did start off at Western working in post-secondary with, yes, Corinne, you can hoop and holler, and in a couple of different capacities to really have that lens of the transitioning to post-secondary and aiding students. She then went on to work at Kia as a coach with financial assistance with the different high schools, and was all over quite the region around her home, and how that experience to really have a deeper knowledge and understanding of financial aid and assistance for students. And then most recently was at Bowling Green High School as their college and career coach, where she also on her own dime and time pursued additional credentialing and career counseling. So we have quite the unicorn here that has had quite the perspective from different angles, from K-12, post-secondary, and even the financial piece, to really deep dive and know the relevant needs and topics of our field. So thank you, Destiny, so much. You'll hear more about this. We need you as a continuum to help push this out. So we'll be sharing this. But this is putting into action what you all saw as a need. And so just wanted to bring that.
Amanda, you've got something wrong with your sound, I think.
Oh.
And other people are hearing it too.
Oh,
And-
my apologies.
Yeah, and I think the commissioner is on the line. I think he is.
Yes.
I am. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, hi, Dr. Thompson and everyone. I'm sorry I'm traveling today, so I'm listening in, but sounds like great progress being made. I'm just happy to be part of the meeting.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glass. And Dr. Thompson, thank you for letting me know about the sound quality. I'll work on that. If you will go to the next slide, Joette, the other thing I want to bring to your attention, one of the recommendations that also came for around the transition, successful transition, was the concern around summer melt and summer bridge programming. And so with the very generous support of KDE and some of their ARPA funds, in addition to some of the funds we had last year as well, we were able to grant $3.5 million for summer bridge programming to 25 of our institutions, public, private, 2-year and 4-year, to really invest in supporting students, making that transition, acclimating to their campus, earning credit. There are lots of different approaches to this. We are anxious to learn from it. We're also going to be bringing these folks together for a community of practice to really share out addressing summer melt and how to support that transition to a positive and successful post-secondary experience. And so just want to bring this to your attention. Again, another recommendation that you all saw as a need that we are acting on, where we will keep you updated on the progress. And we are just super excited to have so many of our post-secondary institutions submit the applications, lots of great ideas, and I'm just so grateful for their willingness to invest this time and money and human capital to ensuring student success. So thank you. And then the next quick update I want to give you is one of the things we heard loud and clear, as I said before, is you were asking for more information, more data. How do we know? Who are we talking about, right? Like when you say we're losing students in post-secondary, who are we losing? How do we know? What's going on? And so we heard you, and we really wanted to start to build a sustainable system. So you would have timely information that we could really work off of live data from Kentucky that we have access to. And we are very blessed to have quite the longitudinal data system and partnerships that we do. So actually, I have on the call today that willingly came is Jessica Cunningham from KY Stats, Dee Dee Connor, KDE, and Travis Muncie on CPE. And they're our core team. We will definitely probably be adding people to our team as needed, but they're online today, have been so nice and kind with their time. We are meeting monthly for an hour to really deep dive into some of the topic areas that you all elevated as areas of interest to address, but really needing more information on how to strategically address the issue and elevate that. And so I am so grateful for Jessica, Dee Dee, and Travis to give us an hour a month to pull their data and to really give us things to work from. It is a great collaboration and a wealth of knowledge on one call. I can't keep up with their technicalities, but I am grateful for them. And so Jessica, Travis, or Dee Dee, is there anything you would want to say briefly or just listen in? Okay. All right. Well, we're grateful for you. And so the last introduction I'd like to make is you probably noticed there is a new colleague on the call. Her name is Robin Abear. She's actually taking Jen Fraker's position on this role on the Continuum. Jen has been extremely busy. If you've been to the annex or seen Dr. Thompson, you have probably seen Jen Fraker. She is the legislative liaison. She's taken that role at CPE and has done a fantastic job. And I think she and Dr. Thompson have spent more time probably at the annex than they have at CPE because of their busyness and all their meetings. And so we're grateful for their advocacy and their hard work during this time, especially during the session. So Jen has not gone away, but she's definitely has a focus on another area. And so we are so grateful to have Robin. She has years of experience in educational leadership, a passion for this work. I've had the opportunity and privilege of working with her in the past, and I think you will be really pleased with the addition to our team. So now we are ready to move into some of this work, and I am super excited for where we are going. So what I'm actually going to be doing is as I'm going to turn this over to Brianna, our great colleague from ESG, to start sharing some initial data. When we met last time, we talked about the momentum metrics that ESG had proposed, just to start thinking about other ways we could address specific needs, specific populations of students who may need changes, opportunity changes, how we really want to leverage our ability to collaborate to make change in the education pipeline to ensure a successful transition into life, really, for all students. And so we chose a few metrics to begin with our amazing data team. And I'm going to now turn it over to Brianna to share that. And you all will get input today to be able to start weighing in on where you want us to go with the different work groups. These are not all preconceived. There's one area that we already have work ready to go. It has not started, but the others really are going to be dependent on how you lead and guide us today and your response to the data. So Brianna, I'm turning it over to you.
All right, great. Thank you, Amanda, and good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be back with you all. You all should be able to see my screen now. Can I just get a head nod? Okay, great. So again, I want to start by thanking our data team that Amanda just mentioned. We brought them together at the end of January to see if they were interested in supporting this work, and they were fully on board. In February, we put together some asks of data we would like for them to pull, and they just worked really quickly to get us the data that I'm going to share with you all today. So just wanted to call out how grateful we are for them and the hard work that they've already put in, and excited to continue working with them throughout the year. So as Amanda said, I'm going to share some of the data that the data team has pulled together for us. I'll go through sort of like how we decided on these data points and some of the key takeaways that we noticed in looking through the data. But also I'm going to ask you all to think, as I'm sharing, what additional questions this is bringing up for you and how you would like to see the Continuum use this data moving forward to support our work this year. So as Amanda mentioned, if you remember back in January, my colleague Lauren shared with you all some information about the momentum metrics. And we asked you all which of these metrics or others along the education to workforce continuum you wanted to focus on and prioritize with the continuum this year. So as a reminder, for 2021, we focused on early post-secondary opportunities, which aligns with that potential for advanced coursework metric. And then we also had our successful transition to post-secondary work group that did a lot of work around FAFSA completion and seamless enrollment, including promoting those summer bridge grants that Amanda just shared about. So we reflected on the feedback that we received from you all, as well as what we had covered last year, and also what we had heard in the conversations that we had with stakeholders throughout the state that we conducted last spring and summer. One thing we heard from you all is an interest in how we can better align education and career. College persistence also came up as a potential priority, and wanting to dig deeper on this potential for advanced coursework and continue the work that we've done with the EPO work group last year. So given all of that, we worked with our data team to focus on a few of the areas you'll see where I have these blue stars. The first is 9th grade on track. The reason we wanted to talk about this is that a lot of the stakeholder engagement that we conducted last spring revealed that there's a need to support students earlier. We can't wait until their junior or senior year to begin having conversations about their post-secondary plan. The next one is potential for advanced coursework and also bridging sort of with this high quality pathway participation. So last year, we did a lot of great work on early post-secondary opportunities, and we really want to make sure that this year we're devoting resources to moving that work forward. So we envision this year we're doing a deeper dive on EPOs. We also didn't focus too much specifically on CTE specific courses, but think that that's a potential avenue that we could pursue this year and hits a little bit better on that alignment between education and the workforce. And then the third that we asked to pull data on was gateway course completion. So we had a whole work group last year that was focused on helping students successfully transition into post-secondary. And so we wanted to look at, well, how are students doing once they're in post-secondary? Are they succeeding in their courses? Are they persisting? And we really like these three because they, touch on the K-12 to workforce spectrum, and thought it was a good place to start with our data team. So I'm going to walk you through some of the data that we pulled for each of these. The first is 9th grade on track. So grade on track is a really good measure of early momentum towards post-secondary success. It's a metric that we see a number of other states using. Some include it in things that they publicly share out. In some states, it's included in their accountability systems. And you see here, I've included a couple of ways that different states define ninth grade on track. A lot of it has to do with our students in their first year of high school completing the credits that they have attempted. We also want to pull in ninth grade GPA because we know that GPA is a really important predictor of high school graduation and post-secondary enrollment. And even, having whether or not students complete courses is great, but we also want to make sure that they're not just completing those courses, but that they're really succeeding in those courses and building the foundational skills that they will need to be successful later in high school and in post-secondary. So this first bit of data that we pulled is looking at that connection between, in this case, 8th grade, so at the end of 8th grade, to post-secondary success. So this is data we pulled looking at students who were in 8th grade during the 2011-2012 school year. So this would be your high school class of 2016. And we can see that based off of this, students who left 8th grade proficient in math or English were much more likely to graduate high school on time, much more likely to earn a 3.0 GPA in high school, more likely to enroll in post-secondary and to earn a post-secondary degree or credential. So that blue bar you see is students who are proficient in both English and math. The orange is that a student was proficient in either English or math. And then the gray is for students who did not demonstrate proficiency in either English or math. So probably nothing surprising here. This all makes sense, but it does show that we have a number of students who are not proficient in either, who are starting high school, needing additional support, and we're seeing that those challenges continue into post-secondary. So our ninth grade data that I'm about to share with you, just want to quickly go over what the sample includes. So it's all first-time Kentucky public school ninth graders for the last 5 academic years. We looked at GPAs and credit hours earned and attempted just for their first year. So this is just looking at their ninth grade year. And students were counted as passing a course if they received a GPA of at least 1.0, so essentially a D or higher in the course. So these first couple of graphs are looking at ninth grade GPA. So on the left, we have average GPA for all students in ninth grade over the last 5 years. You can see we are seeing a pretty steady incline through students who were in school in the 2019-2020 school year. And then for the 2020-2021 school year, you see that drop as a result likely of the pandemic. So just a note here on the year axis that's when students ended their ninth grade year. So for students who ended ninth grade in 2021, they had a 2.65 GPA on average. Before this most recent year, we had actually just broken that 3.0 average, and students had above a 3.0 on average. And then we saw a nearly 0.4 point drop in GPA for the most recent group of freshmen. And then this graph on the right here is showing the percent of students who had above a 3.0 GPA, and then the percent of students in red who completed all credits that they attempted. So similar trends among these lines. We can see even before the pandemic, the percent of students with a 3.0 GPA was just under 60%. And the students who were completing all the credits attempted was just under 80%. But we saw really big drops again for students who began ninth grade in the 2020-2021 school year. So a drop of 13 points for the percent of students with a 3.0 or higher GPA, and a drop of 15 points for students who were passing all of their credits attempted. I think it's really important to look at both these pre and during pandemic numbers. One, because it shows us the impact that the pandemic has had on our students. And two, because it shows us where we were even without the pandemic. So some questions I would encourage this group to consider is, how can we support students who were impacted by the pandemic? And even if we get back to pre-pandemic levels, are we happy with that? Or is there still room for us to continue to improve? I then wanted to look at what the differences were by student characteristic. So This data combines all 5 of those cohorts and shows the percent of students earning a 3.0 GPA or higher. So you can see on the left graph here, our average is that 53% of students over the past 5 years had a 3.0 or higher. We see pretty big differences between our male and female students, about a 12-point gap there. Some differences between our rural and urban, not quite as pronounced, but still a noticeable difference there. And then a really big gap between our paid lunch students and our free and reduced price lunch students, a nearly 30-point gap there in the percent of students who are getting a 3.0 or higher. And then on the right, this is the breakdown by race and ethnicity, and we see similar disparities here. So our American Indian, Black, Hawaiian, Hispanic, and multiracial students all have a lower percent of them or fewer of them than the average are achieving a 3.0 GPA or higher. And for our Black students in particular, about a 20-point gap between the percent of students earning a 3.0 and the percent of students earning a 3.0 for all students. And then finally, we have similar to the previous slide, but this is looking at the percent of students passing all credits attempted. We see similar variation here to what we saw in the previous slide, not quite as varied because we have more students passing all of their classes than we do students who are attaining a 3.0 or higher, but similar differences here in gender. Again, that socioeconomic gap, another 20-point difference. And then once again, the racial disparities are present here as well. So the next one that we pulled data on was dual credit participation and success. For this data, we looked initially at the KY Stats dual credit feedback report, and we'll be sure to share a PDF of these slides with you all afterwards, and you can link to the reports that I have linked in here. So definitely encourage you to take a look at all the great work Jessica and her team is doing over at KY Stats. So this is looking at dual credit participation just for the class of 2017, 18, and 19 graduates. So of those students who graduated those years who participated in dual credit. So it doesn't include our pandemic numbers yet. And we saw for dual credit participation, participation in KCTCS dual credit increased over time, while participation in four-year institution dual credit has declined slightly, but stayed relatively steady. Just a note that this data may include some duplicates. So in 2019, we had 27% of graduates participated in KCTCS dual credit, 12% participated in a four-year institution's dual credit. But there could be students who participated in both, who did a KCTS course and also a four-year course. But we're looking at over a quarter of our students doing KCTCS and about 12% of our students doing four-year dual credit. But then when we look at that participation across the state, again, we see some differences. So this is looking just for the class of 2019 by county, where are students participating in dual credit? Just to note that these kind of gray brownish color counties are redacted. So it doesn't mean that they didn't have any participation, just means that it's redacted. And you can see that on the left-hand side, that like dark blue is the counties that had the highest participation, with Perry County with 85% participation in KCTCS dual credit. So a lot of variation. Again, this breaks it out between KCTCS and four-year institutions. So something we may want to look to in the future is, what do these maps look like when we overlay them on one another? What does dual credit look like overall? And then this is a lot of information, but just wanted to make sure you knew where the sources were for what I'm about to share with you. The first is the data that our data team pulled. So this is looking at all Kentucky public school students who attempted at least one dual credit course, whether or not they then passed at least one dual credit course with a D or higher. And then a couple of CPE reports that I'll talk about after. So the good thing about dual credit is when we get students in it, in general, they tend to do pretty well. So over 95% of students who participate in dual credit are passing at least one course. So they're coming away with those college credits. So looking now at some of the disparities, similar to what we did for ninth grade on track, definitely still exist, but are not quite as pronounced. Overall, we see that students, are still doing 90% and above better in passing a dual credit course if they attempt one. But again, we see some of those disparities. So with our socioeconomic students, or for reduced price lunch versus paid lunch, we see about a 3-point gap. Again, some gender and racial gaps as well. And then this information comes from some great reports that CPE put out recently on dual credit participation and what it means for student success once they're in post-secondary. So those reports found that dual credit participants are more likely to earn a first-year college GPA of a 3.0 or higher than non-participants. For students who are enrolled at KCTCS institutions, dual credit increased the probability of earning a 3.0 GPA by 4.4 points for our technical pathway students and 3.9 points for our academic pathway students. So those are students who are pursuing an associate degree or who are planning to transfer to a four-year school. For students who enrolled at four-year institutions, dual credit had the greatest effect on the first-year GPA of non-minority low-income students. It raised their likelihood of earning a 3.0 or higher by 11 percentage points. And for students who enrolled at KCTCS institutions, there were no significant effects detected for female, underrepresented minority, and low-income students on dual credit participation and first-year GPA. So again, we see that dual credit overall students are doing well. We know that it supports them in being successful in post-secondary, and yet some of that success isn't equitably distributed. And then finally, the last thing that we pulled data on was gateway course completion. So just as a reminder, gateway courses are entry-level credit-bearing English and math courses. So when you went to college, your English 101 class, your intro to college algebra, those types of classes are your gateway courses. So historically, if students entered college and took a placement test and it was determined that they were not yet academically prepared to succeed in a college level class, they were placed in a remedial course. These remedial courses often were multiple semesters long, and students had to complete the remedial courses before they could enroll in the credit-bearing gateway class. So in 2018, Kentucky had a policy shift that was implemented system-wide, where they instead placed students in co-requisite remediation. So co-requisite means that students who are flagged as having remedial needs, so not yet academically prepared to be successful in a gateway course, instead of being put in a remedial course, are placed in their credit-bearing gateway college level course. And then they're also enrolled in a mandatory academic support course. So this really decreases the chance of a student stopping out before they ever get to a college level class. A number of institutions were piloting this before 2018, but in 2018, this happened system-wide. I'm saying all this because you'll see some variation in the graphs I'm about to show you. So just a couple of shifts that we need to keep in mind. One is this policy shift in 2018, the switch to co-requisite remediation. And then the second is obviously the pandemic, which, as we know, has had an impact on students. For a lot of students, it shifted their classes to virtual, which students have different success in. And also college placement exams were not available to all students as a result of the pandemic. So for the 2020-2021 school year and this current school year, universities were allowed to use other methods for determining students' readiness since they were unable to come to campus to take their placement tests. So a lot of things going on in the last few years to keep in mind as we look at this data. For this gateway course data sample, we looked at first-time recent high school graduates who enrolled in the fall following graduation. And we counted them as completing their math and English gateway course if they received a passing grade in that college level course. So this first one is looking at math and English gateway course completion rates over the past few years. So we can see that math has had a pretty steady incline. Math is in that red line there, has had a pretty steady incline over the past decade. We can see a jump after co-requisite remediation is implemented. English, on the other hand, for about the past 5 years, we've been seeing a slight decline in the percent of students who are completing their gateway English classes. And then similar to math, we see a drop from the most recent years, likely as a result of the pandemic. There's also differences in the types of students who are successful in these gateway courses. So this is looking at our English and math gateway courses. The blue is overall what percent of students are completing their gateway courses. The orange is our underrepresented minorities. The gray is for our low income students. And then the yellow is for our underprepared students. You know, it would be expected that students who are entering college underprepared are probably the most likely to struggle to complete their gateway courses. So nothing super surprising there, but we're going to dig in a little bit more into that underprepared group to better understand them. Also a note that this is just for students who entered college in the 2020-2021 school year. So this is that, you know, really pandemic impacted year. We saw similar disparities in previous years, but they were definitely more pronounced in the 2020-2021 school year. So let's talk a little bit more about underprepared students. First, wanted to look at what subjects are students typically underprepared in. So you can see here that the majority of students are underprepared in math. So that's that orange bar. The yellow bar is students who are underprepared in both math and English. And then the blue bar is students who are underprepared in English. You also see this drop in the 2020-2021 school year and the percent who are underprepared. Again, this could potentially be as a result of the pandemic and having to shift placement policies, as well as the lack of test scores for the class of 2020. As would be expected, is students who are underprepared in English and math are less likely to complete gateway courses by pretty significant amounts. So the darkest blue and darkest red line we have is for all students. The line above that, kind of that medium color blue and red, is for the students who were prepared in English or prepared in math. And then the lightest red and lightest blue is for students who were underprepared. Some interesting things to note for our underprepared students in math, it looks like co-requisite remediation or some other policy shift is really helping those students get a lot closer to their prepared peers. English, on the other hand, we saw that for underprepared students, there was an increase from 2018 to 2019, but for our prepared students, their completion rates are slowly declining as well, kind of in line with that average for students overall. And even when we look at students with the same level of preparedness, there are still some disparities in gateway course completion rates. And in particular, this is really pronounced for our low-income students. So these graphs, again, we have math on the left and English on the right. The blue line that's at the top of both is looking at our prepared students who are not low income. And the orange line is students who are prepared but are low income. So hypothetically, these students should have very similar academic preparedness. And yet we see some pretty big gaps here. And I think what's also interesting is, as expected, we saw a drop in the most recent year, but the drop for our low income students is much more severe than it was for our not low income students. And then the gray line, the gray and yellow lines at the bottom, the gray is for our underprepared students who are not low income, and the yellow is our underprepared students who are low income. So again, our underprepared students who are low income are not completing at as high of rates as our underprepared students who are not low income. And one thing that really stood out to me that I just want to highlight is that during the 2020-2021 school year, we saw that low-income students who were deemed as prepared had about the same success rate as non-low-income students who were underprepared. So again, just speaking to that big impact that we saw the pandemic had on our low-income students. And we know that in many ways it exacerbated the inequities that we see. So that was a lot of data. I know we have a PDF of this. I don't know if we want to go ahead and share that, but also happy to go back to any slides you all have questions about. But just wanted to open the floor first for what questions do you all have about this data? And then I would love to hear from you about what surprised you about this data and any additional questions that you may have that you would like the data team to look into after seeing this data. I see we already have a question from Penny. I'm going to stop my screen share for now, just so I can see everyone a little bit better. Yes, Penny.
Hey, I promise you I won't ask you 12 questions, but I might.
Go for it.
So first thing about the data, I'm looking at your subgroups. Did you all pull out students with disabilities? Any classification of special needs? Because also, if we talk about gifted, we have this classification called twice exceptional, right? So how does that factor into that data? in terms of their success in transitioning?
Yeah, that's a good question. We did not pull that out in this data pool. I think that's a great thing to flag for future. Again, I do want to recognize that we asked our data team to do a lot in a very short amount of time. So we're really seeing this as a preliminary conversation and are hoping to we'll make notes of what data we would like to see in the future. So agree that we definitely need to pull out disability status as well.
Okay, great. And the other thing is when I see Black, rural, free and reduced lunch, we have like 1 billion subgroups into that, right? So I'm always going to ask, when you look at dual credit and the success of Black students, I want to know how many that was. Because traditionally, if we look at the data for the last, say, 5 or 6 years across Kentucky, you're looking at 12% of our kids of color who even take gifted, who take advanced or AP courses. So numbers sometimes matter as opposed to the percentages.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good flag as well for us to pull out actual numbers for some of these and not simply the percentages.
But I want to answer Penny's other underlying questions. When we do these data, what we notice is there's a pipeline entering issue. There's a funnel issue. We don't have enough people of color entering, and even low income. So your underlying question, I'm interpreting your underlying question, is that that is one of the issues that we have, is to build that pipeline enough to where you can truly have a relative, as you all know, I'm a statistician by trade, so I have to be careful that I don't get too statistical here. But we have to have a relatively comparable comparison group. And what you're going to find here, even though we took the population of people of color as a whole, just as a whole, which is not proportionally comparable, but it is given an enumeration of how well those that did participate, how successful they were. And that tells us that what we've done is we've denied the opportunity. So it becomes an opportunity gap, because when these Black kids have the opportunity to be in the midst, they performed at a very high level. So once again, I think those have to be the kind of conversations that we look at and think about.
Yeah, and I will also encourage you all to take a look, like I said, at KCTCS's dual credit feedback report that I've linked in that presentation. They do show the breakdown by race and ethnicity and participation. It's just by county. So it would have been a lot to pull every county for you all, but we do have that data, and it's definitely data we could pull at the aggregate for the state level for the next Continuum meeting or for our work group. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Penny. Other questions that you have about this data? Yes, Jenny.
I had a question about reading. So we have a gateway course in reading. Is that included in your English data, or where is like the gateway course in reading data?
Yeah, that's a good question. Travis, I might have to defer to you for that. I think we just looked at English and math for this initial pull.
Yeah, we did, and that's mostly just because that's those are the two areas that we really base our prepare our readiness policy around. But we do have those data, so we could add that to the overall if we need to.
Historically speaking, Jenny, I know you know this, that's where you'll really see a lot of the correlation.
I think so too. So I think it's really important that we collect that data and share that data and have a discussion about it.
And David had a question I noticed in chat. David, we don't have enough in yet with all the folks, because dual credit, the way we have done in the last many years, and the way graduation rates are decided or how they're done, we want, and Travis, correct me here, we need about another year or two on data to give you that as a reasonable way of thinking about the validity of the outcome. Am I right,
Exactly.
Travis?
Exactly. Yeah. So we're waiting to get a few more years of data, and then with that 150% graduation rate, we're looking at 6 years into 4 years, and 4 years worth of data, or 3 years worth of data at KCTCS. So yeah, we can do some outcomes. So as far as retention rates, GPAs, stuff of that nature, that's what we focused on with our previous studies. But hopefully we'll be able to start including the actual completions in our near future studies.
And just to be more specific, these leading indicators are highly correlated with completion outcomes. So that, and the only intervening variable we'd have, and we've been trying to address that, is whether or not students have enough money to complete their education. This is where affordability comes in. So when we look at what we've done now at all of our institutions and having those need-based pieces put in as a completion mechanism, that should even come out, that should be mitigated somewhat. So that's a good question.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think Corinne had a comment to Brianna. First generation status considerations as well, please. Corinne, did you want to add to any of that?
Just that that's the common denominator that we're seeing. You can roll through all the different demographics, but the underlying, when it's first generation, that's the highest at-risk category, no matter what additional variables. At least that's what we're seeing. So it'd be great to know that at the state level.
Yeah. Travis, do we have that data? Is that pretty easy to access? I know first gen can be a little tricky to measure. So.
Yeah, we have a proxy to first gen. So we collect the student financial aid file, which has their FAFSA information. So if a student completed a FAFSA, then we can use their mothers and fathers education fields to be able to approximate that. So we don't have it from like any sort of administrative file, but we can create a proxy through the financial aid file.
There's one other thing I'd like to add, Brianna, on your data when you're talking about what's happening with the English scores and the math scores. What we found out when we look at what's going on campuses when they do the co-requisite models, there's probably a lot more supplemental instruction in the math than there are in the English. That's one thing. Number two, which obviously that's why we use these items to know how to change policy and direction, right? Another item truly is, and this is where the transition comes in, we have, and I got Jenny and other people here that's been around this for a while, we're seeing more students probably reading and English deficient coming in than we've seen in a long time. I mean, that's what's going on around the country. So you're really working with probably a harder hill to climb. I hate to say that. I mean, because I was math phobic and I became a statistician. I'm not sure what that means. But sometimes we've not done a very good job to make sure that a student is mechanically speaking, English, competent as well as reading competent. So we've known that for a while. So that's why I think things like the bridge programming is so good. That's why I think those sorts of interventions are even more needed than ever. So in 2018, when I just outlawed all developmental education and say we're just going to do this across the board, we saw a big jump. Because what happened was that you had a lot of people that were already in the pipeline that may be a little bit more prepared, I don't know. But there was a whole lot of effort in trying to make sure we designed what was going to happen to make it work. And there was a lot of other input of dollars from CPE, even to our campuses to help them to do that. So there's a lot of explanations around those numbers that I won't take up all of our time today. Amanda's getting nervous that I may, around these sorts of outcomes.
Aaron, just as a follow-up to that, I think for parents, it's a much easier for them to kind of understand where their child is on a math continuum because of the courses and kind of the general knowledge about math courses and, the trajectory of math courses. And in reading in English, it is very difficult, I find, in conversation with students who are coming in underprepared in those topics, for parents to even know that there were issues there. And I do think that, that goes back to some when we eliminated, when ACT did away with the plan and we eliminated some of that early, notification to families and to schools about, shortfalls there. I think I've seen that exasperated since then.
I'm curious, was anything surprising about this data? Or did this bring up any additional questions that you would want the data team to probe on? I know we've covered a number already, but anything surprising or any additional questions that you'd like to probe on?
Brianna, this is Jim Flynn. I'm with the Superintendent's Association, and unfortunately, I had a call from a legislator and missed a bit of your presentation, but I was really interested in the presentation. But one of the things I was thinking when you were talking about the dual credit, impacts, how does that interplay with like AP, IB, those kinds of programs? Because I know where I was superintendent, we had a large group of students that wanted to take advantage of dual credit, but then we had another group of students that they wanted the AP opportunities, and so how does that all play together, and is that something we need to look at?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Again, for this, we just focused on dual credit, but I think EPO more broadly would be good to look at. So that's something we see, not just in Kentucky, but across the country, is that some districts maybe don't have a lot of students participating in dual credit, but they have a ton doing AP. And we're hearing from a lot of districts too that they want to know like which is more effective, which do students tend to perform better in post-secondary, which EPOs tend to better prepare them. So I think there's point well taken, and something that we can look into in future data polls.
Well, once again, I get asked this question all the time as superintendents, principals, and everything else. They say, and people cringe when I bring this up, but I always bring it up, that if someone tells me I want my kids to have dual credit and not AP because dual credit's easier, we know they get it, that's very problematic to me as the head of higher education. You understand what I'm saying? Both of those are college courses that should be of equal depth in learning and outcomes. So I think the question of which one does better, I think it's going to be a little interesting because of the way that we accept AP with 3 or higher. My argument is if you have an AP course that you get 2 on, that you probably learned a lot. I want to say the same thing about our dual credit. But one of the things that we're going to be doing, Amanda and her crew, is to ensure with our campuses that dual credit has the equal rigor and outcomes, that all of our students get to be more competent in areas of dual credit, whatever course they take, as they would be in any AP course. So that is exactly the way we're going to approach this.
Yeah, really helpful context. And AP actually just recently is now saying that they did some study on students who had scored 2 on the exams, and exactly what you're saying, Dr. Thompson, those students do learn a lot and they do perform better than their students who don't participate, or their peers who don't participate in AP at all. So.
Well, and to build on that, President Thompson, I think the more we can value, whether it's AP, IB, Cambridge, dual credit, or even CTE credentialing, it depends on that student's passion and what they're interested in. And we've got to find ways to value all those different opportunities for kids and not have policies that tend to make one, seem better over another. And that's what I think superintendents would like to make, sure that moving forward, we're thinking about more of a benefits-based accountability around the primary stakeholder being the student. And so that depends on that person and kind of where they want to go.
Now, Jim, you're absolutely right. And we are too. We're moving from a teaching process to a learner's process. And the argument is all of those, if you look at it from a strength-based front-end piece of knowledge, may be beneficial to one more than the other versus looking on the back end, which is generally across the board, whether we put everybody in one box and then measure those when maybe some of those people shouldn't be in that box. I think we are going to have to look at each one of those in a strength-based, independent variable model that says Aaron Thompson is really good, and he learns a whole lot by having hands-on. So how can we make sure Aaron Thompson ends up in that place where he feels or she feels, could be a woman, Aaron Thompson, by the way, that that they're getting the outcomes that they need to build their path, right? So I really appreciate the way you just said that.
Can I jump in quickly, and then I know we can move on. We need to move on. I was looking at the original slide where it talked about, all of these ninth grade indicators feed into who goes to college, the percentage of who goes to college. I want to remind, what I'm really happy about is I want to remind everybody, if you haven't read United We Learn document, to read the United We Learn document, because the Commissioners Coalition talks about just this. And the learning labs, the L3s that we have, all have some iteration of the portrait of a graduate. And it begins at 8th grade, roughly. Some of them can even begin at 6th grade. But this, if nothing else, tells us that we've got to be, one, working together. We've got to make sure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. And that I think we're on a good path to see this correlation actually come to fruition. So shout out to the commissioner yet again.
Thanks, Penny.
Great. Well, appreciate you all and your really thoughtful questions. Again, really excited to have the data team that's going to continue to share out at these and share this data with our work groups moving forward. I'm going to turn over to Amanda now, who is going to talk through some ideas that we have for what those work groups could be for this year.
Yeah, so I appreciate the conversation. I always love what this group sees and brings to the table. And Penny, you could not have ushered this in any better. So thank you for this great introduction, because this is exactly what we've been talking about and hassling with. And when we were looking at these indicators, my question is, okay, what do we do with this ninth grade on track, right? Like, it's not just a KDE issue, right? It's not just a parent, like, so what do we do with it? And exactly what you said is, if we know in 8th grade and 9th grade what those outcomes are going to be, and the data that was supplied was not COVID years, these were before COVID years, then what can we do? And this goes back to everything that Destiny talked about, and the importance of advising that we invest early and often, because this is indicating where they're going, and why are we waiting so long and hoping that they get there? And that even means that the exposure and access to early post-secondary opportunities, this is to help them navigate some interests that they have through pathways, or any type of these things to help students understand who they are and what their interests are, to help them navigate, and their families, right? Because this is not easy stuff. This is hard stuff. And if we lose them after freshman year, it's never going to get easier to get them back. And so, Penny, thank you for setting that up beautifully, because that's exactly where we've talked a lot about, and I've really wrestled with. I want it to be meaningful and for people to see the connection, and you just connected it beautifully, much better than I would have. So there are 3 areas that, as you saw in the data, that we're going to dig into a little deeper, and we're going to do breakouts. You get to pick your breakout, but basically it's around 9th grade on track. And what are we going to do with that? What are some things, some actionable items we can move in that direction to work together? And as Penny said, there's the United We Learn efforts from KDE that's really deep diving into that meaningful learning opportunities. How does that connect to their decisions as they walk across the stage and move on past K-12? How do we connect those? So that's going to be one area you can dig deeper into, that we're going to be looking at some possible deliverables. Who should we have at the table to talk about that, and how do we move forward? The EPO, access and success. Today, we only talked about dual credit. We're going to be putting some emphasis on dual credit to increase some quality, update the policy piece. As Dr. Thompson already mentioned, we want it to be meaningful for students. We want it to count towards gen ed, not a bunch of electives. We want it to be an opportunity for preparedness. It's also a financial piece. When I will give you, when I paid for 9 credit hours for my daughter this semester, and I paid $711, I was celebrating and she felt bad because $700 to her as a almost 18-year-old feels like 7 million. For a parent, paying $711 for 9 credit hours is a blessing. I mean, so to have those opportunities and really message the academic opportunities for students and the financial opportunities for the student and their families, we got a lot of work to do around that on updates. We are incredibly blessed in the state to have dual credit scholarships and to have participating post-secondary institutions who work with us in all of our 2 years. I mean, we got a lot of great things already going, but we do need to clean some things up. So that work does have some support with a little bit of grants. And we have some ideas and a framework to move with. So we're a little more on that path based on what you all recommended last time, but that's just the tip of the iceberg of how to really improve efforts around that. And ultimately, if you all remember, the priority was increasing access so all students have an opportunity to engage and participate and succeed in early post-secondary opportunities. So not just dual credit, also AP, IB, Cambridge, career pathways to earn credentials. There are so many opportunities. We just got to do better. So, and we have the data to show where we need to do better. So that's the second one. And then the third year is first year success. So we get them there, but are we really preparing them the best that we can? Are we transitioning well? Are we, how are we helping them matriculate and succeed? And where do we need to cross paths more? So I think it's really important to look into those who are underprepared and the different student populations and how they're responding and how we can even work together to strengthen that area as well. So it all fits in together, but it's getting a little more granular, as you all have requested, that we can't just hit this 30,000 foot, like, got to do better. We got to have more kids going to school or making post-secondary decisions. We're trying to really get into the depths. So I say all that to say you get to pick your breakout area, and Joette's going to put options up. We're going to be in there for about 30 minutes if we need to. If we get done before, then I will certainly be creeping in to make sure that this is run efficiently. And we have Lauren, Brianna, and Robin who are going to facilitate that and really capture feedback. You're driving this conversation, and the data will be available again for you to see, because I don't know why you didn't memorize all those charts and graphs, but they will be available. So Joette, if you don't mind to put the options up, and if you will select a room and you will be teleported to that room. So you can join. You should be able to click on your name and assign yourself.
What am I doing wrong here, Amanda?
Let's see. You should be able to, on the right side of your name towards the end, if you click on that, Paul, where do you want to go? I can assign it if it's acting wonky for you. Do you want ninth EPO, first year success, or ninth grade on track?
EPO is fine.
Got it. I'm sending you there.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I've been saying
Having the same problem, Amanda, EPO.
EPO, you got it, Jenny. Let's see. EPO, and it should send you there.
Yeah, I'm having the same. I don't see it right clicking or anything.
Where you want to go, David?
Let's see, what about the high quality pathways? Is that one?
No, it's ninth grade EPO, first year success.
Yeah, EPO.
You got it.
I'll let you send me anywhere. First year success is my.
That's where I was going to send you. Anybody else?
I'm in the same boat, Amanda.
Where would you like to go?
I guess the ninth grade.
Okay. I'll send you there.
Thanks.
Amanda, you want to send me somewhere, wherever
Yeah.
you want?
Do you want to go to EPO maybe?
Sure.
Okay. Thanks. think everyone has teleported back. So thank you for the conversation. And are we, Joette, we're good to go live, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So just really briefly, I'm going to give the facilitators just a few seconds just to share high level what was shared, the top 3 things that will kind of drive our work and move us in a direction towards work groups. So I'm going to start with you, Lauren, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was with the EPO work group. We had a good discussion, so it's hard to narrow down just to 3, but I'll try to do my best. First, I think we recognize the strong work that the EPO work group did for the Continuum last year, and so felt it was important to build upon the recommendations there, particularly recognizing, and Amanda shared this earlier with the full group, the top recommendation coming out of that EPO work group was it's about not only access, but also about success and making sure that students are being successful in these courses and ultimately earning credit that they can apply towards their post-secondary degree. So our group really talked about providing concrete, actionable strategies for how to engage and support particularly underserved students in this work, recognizing the Kentucky Advising Academy is a first foray into making that actionable. On a related note, recognizing the importance of advising, including not just thinking about people as advisors, but also some of the technology tools that we have access to as a state is going to be really critical. And particularly, there's a lot of conversation around helping students and families better understand how their EPO courses will count towards their post-secondary degree, rather than just taking any dual credit just because, making sure that it's relevant and will count. And then lastly, because I know this group also was thinking more broadly around EPOs, recognizing the importance of being inclusive around CTE, which is something that the Continuum didn't touch on a lot last year, but also recognizing that we need to do a bit of work around how do we sell parents around kind of multiple pathways beyond a kind of traditional 4-year path. And so doing some work there.
Awesome, thank you. And we will share out all of these documents of captured feedback. We'll make them clean and pretty, but we will definitely share that with you along with the PowerPoint. Brianna, would you want to give your update?
Yeah, shout out to everyone who came into the 9th grade on track. Great discussion. We got cut off, which is the sign of a good discussion. So a lot of great research questions that came up that we want to continue to probe on, but a few potential tasks for the work group that came out. One is thinking of ways for 9th grade students to explore their career interests earlier and creating a more unique 9th grade experience. Another would be to develop a statewide definition for 9th grade on track. So if you remember in the presentation, we talked about how other states define 9th grade on track. And then with that, developing, some strategies or maybe a toolkit that districts can then use to implement a 9th grade on track strategy. And then some good suggestions already coming up around ways that the work group needs to engage students and parents through a stakeholder engagement process to make sure we're capturing student voice, not only those who are 9th grade, 10th grade and beyond who've experienced what it is to be a 9th grader, but for our students who are maybe in middle school and looking ahead to 9th grade and what they're hoping to get out of that experience.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a lot. Yeah, I figured all these things would bubble up today. So that's great. And then we will round out with you, Robin, to give an overview of the Gateway course data and discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we had an awesome conversation as well, and lots of ideas and thoughts and problem solvers in the group, but it was hard to come up with just 3 things that were our big takeaways. But the first one would be to shift to a more holistic look at students, not just their academic readiness, but also their social, emotional, cultural readiness and supports that they need. And that kind of led into the second one, which was to create more of a shift from student readiness to IGs being more student ready, that to shift a little bit more of that. And for us to be more proactive in terms of not waiting for students to say, this is what we need, but, and I'm quoting Dr. Thompson here, but to say, we know that this is what you deserve, and to have some checkpoints in place to try to figure out where are some early warning signs that will let us know when someone is struggling, and what can we do to help and support to get them on track and fully immersed in their experience. There was a lot of conversation about that something else that first year college students need that helps them get through the areas where they might struggle, and what some of those things might be. And finally, when we were talking about what our potential work groups might be focused on, one big topic that bubbled up to the top was how to make the senior year a seamless experience into that first year of college, that students should see more of a connection between that last experience in high school and the first year, that should just sort of be its own thing, where they see the importance of the courses that they take and how that prepares them for that first year. And then just that overall shift to being more student ready. My group did say they would pop in and help summarize what we talked about. So please feel free to do that if I left anything important out.
You did excellent. Oh, well, just one thing. I'm sorry. That the idea when you're focusing on the whole student that first year, it has to be a holistic way of doing it. In other words, we're not only preparing them for college, it needs to be the foundation year. That's complete, holistic. We're not only preparing them for college, we're preparing them for life. This is a year they meet more people that's different than them than they've ever met. How do they learn from that, right? How do we look at all those pieces in a way that is truly cutting down those artificial barriers of student affairs, academic affairs, to really creating a holistic student experience that goes to all those things that Robin just mentioned. So, those are the sorts of things that we need to be, in my opinion, really, we are focusing on them in Kentucky, but how do we make CEC really seeing, that senior year, as she mentioned, truly as the last piece of going into college, not preparing for college. They should be preparing for college all the way through, right? So, but how's that senior year really that year of saying, how am I going, and Luke brought this up, how do we align our curriculum? How do we align our pathways? How do they see themselves as being, acceptable to college? Amanda, with this maybe early acceptance program we're looking at. All of those things, that was the biggest topic. So Robin did a great job of laying it out.
That is fantastic. So this pushes us so beyond any of our conversations we've even had, which is why I rely on your all's expertise and the varied views that you bring. I think it really makes our work much more robust and more meaningful. So thank you so much today. Gosh, you've given us a lot to think about. So I'm glad, data team, we have our meeting tomorrow. So we have a lot to discuss. Robin is going to place in the chat a link to a survey. This is not a survey about today's meeting. This is about if you're interested in any of these work groups, because we always give the Continuum members first dibs on any interest of serving on those work groups. If you don't have time or don't feel like it's your expertise, but you would like to suggest someone that you feel like could really be a great contributor to this work around these 3 buckets that we've talked about today, please add to that. Robin has put that in the chat for you to click on and fill out. And then the last thing, of course, for me is just our commitments to you. Is you will get notes from today. You will get the feedback. I think it's always powerful to read other folks' feedback. And you'll also get the Zoom link. And then we will send you additional information. We will meet again in June, and we will keep you also up to date on suggested work groups. We would like to get those organized and up and running in April, but we're going to do that based on your feedback from today and start building out membership. So we'll be reaching out to you all as well, especially if you submit your name or submit someone else's that you think would be really strong or powerful. If you don't know a person, but a role group specific that you would really want to make sure that's represented on a group, please submit that too. That just helps us to be very cognizant of true voice that is going to take us to strategic action. Other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Thompson to close us out for today. It has been highly productive. I've missed seeing you, and I look forward to this continued work. Dr. Thompson?
Thank you, Amanda. First of all, I want to thank Amanda. I mean, none of this stuff goes on without her, and she's been an invaluable member of our team and just wonderful. Welcome aboard, Destiny. Welcome aboard, Robin. What great additions. I just want to tell you, a lot of people talk all the time about why should post-secondary education be so heavily engaged with P12 and early childhood. Well, I don't know how we get anywhere without being heavily engaged. I don't know how we get ultimately to the 60 by 30 that we've set at CPE for higher education, getting 60% of our, this number didn't come out by chance, right? It just didn't appear because it sounded cool. We know for Kentucky to have a sustainable economy, we're going to have a sustainable educated workforce. We know that, Jim, as much as like say high school just ain't enough, but Bob King used to say, I can't believe I just repeated that. But the idea that it has to be something with a sustainable credential, Paul. I mean, it doesn't have to be a 4-year degree, but it has to be a quality credential. And when we have them, we need to make sure they're going into this workforce in a way that they do have lifelong learning and they do have the ability to know that they got a quality education from us. That's our job. Not only am I proud to lead higher education, I'm proud to be an academic, an educator. That's what I am proud of because I know the impact that we have. The item I will say as closing this out, and then if someone wants to add, we have a minute or two left. If somebody wants to add something, please do so quickly after I finish. But you know, the item that we have here with this CEC is crucial to not just thinking about we have meetings that we're going to attend to talk about cool stuff. This is really about action. This is very little about preparing. This is now about action. We can do data all day long, but bottom line, everybody around this Zoom table know exactly what some of the issues are. It's about now not blaming, but about doing. And so that's one of the reasons why I love what we're doing in this game. One of the pieces that I will tell you I want to add to the conversation, you know, we may have more money coming in the higher ed and K-12 we've had in a long time. I challenge us to think about what that means. I challenge us to think about being strategic. I challenge us to think about being innovative. I don't like if we think about, well, we're just replacing money we haven't had before. Because at that level, we're saying that we haven't done our best in the past to do what we need to do. I am proud to say that Kentucky is now, higher education-wise, we're number 7 in the country in completion. Travis, who would have ever thought we'd be there, right? You know, in a long time. We are number 1, if not number 1, I want someone to prove to me who is in closing gaps around minoritized students in higher ed. So whatever that we can do stuff even when the money isn't there. Now we've got some money coming in. How do we do more better stuff, right? Is that the way we would say that? So I challenge us to think about that. We are leaving, when we think about the funnel, we're not getting enough people of color into the funnel, not enough first generation, not enough low income. We got to get them there, but once we get them there, we got to give them what they need, right? We've got to get more people in the funnel. 50% is not enough, period. So all of those things, how can we now be innovative in working on these opportunities that we have and close some of those gaps? So I thank you all for this work, but I never want you to leave this meeting thinking that this is just another meeting. I know I don't take it as such, and I hope you don't either. And so any statement, questions that anyone want to give us before I let you go early? I just know I appreciate you and all you do. Have a good rest of this day and rest of this week.
Thanks, Aaron.